Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. So walk with me out to the potager because I want to talk about a subject that I have gotten lots of questions on. But first, I'm noticing this. As I am en route, a lot of you have asked about what I use for insects. And this is one of the products I use a lot. I really like it. I'll put a link below in the description. It's Dr. Earth Rose and Flower Insect Killer, and you'll notice all sorts of pests that it addresses. For me right now, a lot of that is whitefly and scale, and a little bit later I'll show you some of the plants that seem to be suffering from that for a bit. But right now, let's walk slowly back into the potager. The squirrels and bugs and blowers are out, but it is again another uncharacteristically cool morning. It's just beautiful, and I think today maybe the high is only supposed to get up to about 83. Some of you asked what that was hanging on this tutor from Gardener's Supply. That is one of those Centurion mosquito control devices that sadly are out of stock right now. I need to check on that. Here, en route, let me just show you this corner again, because with all of that rain and a good feeding, the geraniums and the begonias are really happy. I was telling Stuart that I often am surprised that you don't seem to tire of me showing you the same areas over and over again. But then I realized I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, because a garden is always changing, and I know that I never tire of my garden, and you never tire of yours probably. And well, I take that back. Maybe in August, when it's this hot, we tire of it. But so maybe you just enjoy seeing my small garden transform over time. And I will say there's always something to look at. So the topic for today is actually lavender. Now, I have somewhat hesitated to sound in any way like I am an expert about lavender, because I have killed more than I have cultivated, and it is not necessarily an easy plant, I don't think, to grow in our part of the country, in the humid South, and probably even in areas where you live in the North and in the Midwest, and in colder parts of the country, because it is a Mediterranean plant. But I will put a couple of links below to two resources, one from TLC, which is a local nursery here, and another blog post that my friend Dee at Red Dirt Ramblings, one of the best gardeners I know, wrote about growing lavender in Oklahoma. And she talks about different varieties, which I won't go into too much. But the article from TLC talks about basically 3 different types of lavender, English hybrids, and then the rest, like French and Spanish, different varieties. And then within those subsets, of course, there are things like phenomenal lavender, which do well in Oklahoma. I have yet to get my hands on one of the Merlot lavenders from the Southern Living Plant Collection. I'm still working on that. These are, in all likelihood, they were unnamed when I got them. These were topiaries of, I believe, just English lavender, probably Munstead or something. And this is a topiary that I have had for a number of years. I think I got it originally from, where did I get it? A nursery up near Tulsa, or this may have been one of the ones that I got at Lowe's or at Home Depot. And you can see it's gotten rightfully large, and I repotted it just recently into a much larger pot, and it is so much happier. So that would be number one. Make sure that you give them lots of space. They do not like to be root bound. They'll be pretty when you first buy them in topiary form, but they come in a very root congested state, and I think it's hard to get them to thrive after that. So this one I must have immediately transplanted, and I've had this one for several years, and I love the maturity of the trunk and kind of the Mediterranean gnarliness to it. So let's go over here. Oh, and I do have a question for you. Do you all let your coleus flower? I typically do not, but I love this blue color on this golden variety, and it kind of matches the scabiosa that's in there. So I'll pinch it back pretty soon once the bloom is spent. But normally I am a pincher, not a keeper. So let's come over here, and I'll show you this one, which is just a smaller version of the other English lavender I just showed you. This one I also repotted into a larger pot, about a third again the size of its original root ball, and it is very happy. Now here's a couple of tips on keeping them looking fresh. You'll notice down at the bottom that sometimes the older leaves start drooping and they start yellowing, and a lot of times I'll just get my scissors out and I'll snip those off and give it a tiny prune. So I keep these, whatever variety it is, and you can see back there growing in the ground, and over on this side as well I have some tufts of lavender growing at the base of these posts. I deadhead those and give them light trims throughout the season, both these in the pots and in the ground. And I immediately deadheaded them after they bloomed the first time, and I've gotten little spurts of repeat blooms subsequently. And I will give them just a tidy all throughout the growing season. And at the end of August, I will be more aggressive, and I will prune both of these in the pots and in the ground into tidier mound shapes, rounded shapes, being very careful not to go into the hardwood. I'll just stay within the realm of the soft and pliable branches. And I'll cut these into a rounded form that are in the pots, and then that which is in the ground over here, I will do the same thing, and I'll cut it into a rounded form. This little tuft I just planted this year to match this mound over here on the other side, which has been here now. This will be going on its third year. So you may ask, what is the trick to planting? Well, they just have to have tremendous drainage. They hate our Oklahoma clay, and consequently when I planted this, I pretty much excavated a huge amount of clay soil out of here. I just got rid of it, and then I put in, I believe it was a blend of cactus mix potting soil and some gravel. And I made sure the bottom of the hole was deep and filled with lots of gravel, because I don't want them to rot out. And that's what I did on both sides, and it seems to be working so far, though if they both met their demise, I wouldn't be surprised. And then obviously I mulched them with gravel, and I mulched the pots with gravel because they like the reflected warmth. It keeps the humidity off of these arid-loving plants. And especially in the winter, it keeps them happy, keeps them dry, and again, they like the reflected heat. So let me come over here. We're starting to get some light. And this is another large pot that I have. And I have had this pot for quite a while. And I love this rolled rim ribbed pot. And I do the same. I periodically deadhead it, and I will cut it in late August. And I'll show you how I do it at that point in time. in the softwood only to keep it in a mounded form. And in the pots, I use the same potting blend. I'll use, for the most part, a well-draining cactus mix or something along those lines, and I'll add either gravel or a coarse grit. I sometimes like chicken grit, and you can get that at a farmer's supply. Sometimes you could probably get it at your garden center. And then I want to come over here and show you just how beautifully it companions with this Bambina pineapple guava, and then a couple of other plants that remind me of lavender. And by the way, this is a rosemary in front that remind me of lavender, and that's this Texas sage or Silverado sage. And I have just transplanted both of my large topiaries of these into larger pots, and they both were almost instantaneously happier. I mulched them with gravel. These are just in plastic pots. Later I may set them into a more decorative container, but they're black and they just recede into the background, so that doesn't bother me. And then for the same reasons the lavender likes to be mulched in gravel, these do as well. And you can see they're starting to put out a few of their fuchsia colored flowers that happily are the same hue and the same color echo as the tall phlox that's starting to bloom in the background, just little spots of color. So if you have trouble growing lavender, you might consider Silverado sage. It doesn't have the fragrance, but it does have that wonderful blue-gray texture that I like. And then I know they say that lavender really likes dry Mediterranean conditions. It likes lots of heat. But I have also found it takes more water than most of the instructions imply. It does not like to dry out. It wants perfect drainage, I promise, but it does not want to dry out. I still have not gotten those 2 additional pots in the ground. But look at how beautiful the rosemary looks. So this entire tableau of Mediterranean plants with lavender as one of the players, I think, is really beautiful. So try different kinds of lavender. I assume when I buy some, and again, 99% of the time I put it in pots, I don't put it in the ground. Dee will have additional tips for you in her blog post. Again, I'll put a link at the bottom. And there's my shadow. Follows me everywhere. But don't be heartbroken if you buy some lavender and it decides to expire on you. Just make sure that if you repot it fairly quickly, you loosen that root ball, you give it the kind of soil that it wants, not a lot of fertilizer, then you too may be able to grow lavender. Again, I don't advance myself as any kind of expert, but I have had that one pot for a number of years and haven't managed to kill it. And by the way, yes, I do bring those in. I put those in the greenhouse. And for the most part, they are pest-free. Lavender augustifolia. There are other varieties. You can certainly do more in-depth research on lavendula if you like. But those are my tips. Excellent drainage, repot, give them room to grow and spread. Give them a gravel mulch. They take a little bit more water than you might think. And then just enjoy them as long as you have them. Happy Monday, all.